The Honourable Leader of the Official Opposition.
Thank you so much, Mr. Speaker. Like other members of this House, I've received recently an absolute avalanche of messages from islanders who are struggling financially, whether that's a single person who's suddenly faced with a sticker shock of going to a grocery store or filling up at a gas station, or a large family who's barely hanging on and find themselves ineligible for many of the programs, including the relief package that was announced last week, because their household income is a bit above $50,000. An avalanche doesn't just happen. It's the result of many layers accumulating one on top of the other over time. And like an avalanche, on the surface, everything may look fine, but then something happens suddenly, something destabilizing that triggers a catastrophic change, and everything tumbles down. And that's sort of how this feels for a lot of islanders. This has been building for a very, very long time. The housing crisis, 7% inflation, low wages, and now spiking oil and gas prices have prompted what for many islanders is an economic disaster. In a recent by-election, I arrived at a fairly typical island home, and I was greeted at the door by a friendly elderly woman, and she told me how proud she was of her modest house and how she and her late husband had managed to raise 4 children and pay off their mortgage on a single salary, his salary as a cab driver here in Charlottetown. How things have changed. And I don't know what she and her husband would have paid for the house, of course, but clearly back then it was possible on a single salary to buy a house, raise a large family, and become debt-free. The economy has grown enormously since then, and it has changed in other ways also. But despite that unparalleled growth over the perhaps 40 or 50 years that this woman had lived in her home, many, many folks in many, many ways are far worse off than they were before. We used to have an economy that worked for people, and now we have people working for the economy and working harder and harder for less and less. Had we established a basic income, reorganized tax structures to be truly fair and progressive, and vigorously tackled the housing crisis 3 years ago, things could be a lot different here. That kind of economic foundation is something on which we can build a truly prosperous, resilient, and sustainable provincial economy long into the future, a green economy, an equitable economy that will work for all islanders. Thank you, Mr. Speaker.